Scott with you as we continue teaching on the insight to end times. We're looking at where we are in God's timetable. And as we get closer and closer to the end of this age, we are getting closer and closer, of course, to the last 7 years, the 7 years of tribulation that God promised in Daniel chapter 9 and referred to all throughout the book of Revelation. We have studied a great deal of that already. Today, we are in Matthew 24, and we're looking at the warning signs or the signs of the end as shared by Jesus in response to his question, the question from his disciples, when will the end of the age be? What will be the sign of your coming? And so on. He first of all answers, there's going to be a lot of deception in the land. Take heed that no one deceive you. He then talks about many coming in the name of Christ, saying, I am the Christ, and they'll deceive many. That is an extremely powerful point. He then declares in verse 6, there's going to be wars. You're going to hear of wars and rumors of war. We shared about that yesterday. And today we're moving into verse number 7, towards the end of it, where it says there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. I want to give you some background, some detail on this because we overlook this. For the most part, we're not suffering from famine here in North America, and for the most part, we don't have earthquakes here. We have experienced the recent pandemic, which is a pestilence, but outside of that, all these things are happening everywhere else. So since it's not in our backyard, we don't pay too much attention to it. But we have seen famines all around the world, and they are a massive, massive problem in the underdeveloped nations. They wipe out thousands and thousands of people. If you were to do a Google search as a for instance on how many famines have there been in the world, you would be reading for quite some length of time because year after year after year after year, there are significant famines occurring somewhere in the world. I'll give you just some for instances or some examples. And I'm going to start by taking you way back in time to 400 AD, 400-year period concluding in 800 AD in the nation or the city of Rome, in the nation of Italy, of course. About 90% of the people died during those 400 years from famine. That's hard to believe. That's hard to believe. If we fast forward to the 1700s, 1708 to 1711, as a for instance, the East Prussian people, 41% of the population died from famine. That's around 250,000 people. Folks, even in the 1700s, that's a lot of people. That's a significant number of people. In the 1800s, 76 through 79, so the latter half of the 1800s, the 19th century, over in China and in India, severe famines over that 4-year period, 76 to 79. They estimate in China anywhere from 9 to 13 million people died from famine, and 5.5 million people died from famine in India. So famine isn't something that's just current, in the last number of years, the last century or so. This goes all the way back in time. Famines have been a major, major issue. The North Koreans lost upwards of 3.5 million people in a famine in the mid-1990s. I bet you didn't hear about that one. We aren't made aware of that. Second, in the Congo, in Africa, the second war that they held there in 1998 through 2004, 2.7 million people. Are you getting the picture? Famines is a real problem. And in Niger and West Africa, in the 2005 to 2006 time period, 3 million people in Niger died, and 10 million people died in West Africa from famine. There have been 38 major famines since World War II, and 0 in North America. Now, since the pandemic hit, we're seeing supply chain issues. We're seeing a run on the grocery stores and all the other stores that provide food and or liquid. And we're seeing a lot of empty shelves, and we're seeing a lot of panic because they're predicting a lot of shortages in the coming months owing to the pandemic and all the other issues going on around the world. Famine is a real issue. It's a real sign of the end times. It may not be occurring right in our backyard, but it is occurring, and we ought to be aware of it. Secondly, before we run out of time, and we're likely about to, I want to talk about pestilence with you for just a moment. And by definition, this includes diseases, viruses, epidemics, and pandemics. In March of 2020, we were advised of the COVID-19 virus and the pandemic associated with it, and within months or weeks, fear spread across the entire world, and a rush to protect yourself from this pandemic occurred around the entire world. We had all kinds of different medical reports coming out and scientific reports coming out and government edicts coming out, and we had all kinds of things occurring that just created massive, massive panic and massive, massive fear in people. Here we are in late 2022. This is the month of October. We are about 30 months since this pandemic began. People are still afraid. People are still scurrying around, and the hospitals are overworked. The medical staffs are overworked. We have massive issues in our hospitalization programs, our emergency rooms, etc., etc. All because we have a worldwide pandemic that everyone has become aware of, and everyone is racing around in circles trying to figure out what to do about it. I could go into a lot of detail, but suffice it to say, these are end time signs. Tomorrow we'll look at earthquakes. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye.